The chamber lights dimmed across the massive hall on Centauri Prime. Council Speaker Vexter stood at the central podium, his scaled hands gripping the edges as he surveyed the assembled representatives. 73 species had sent their ambassadors to this emergency session. One species was notably absent. Ambassador Kyle Morrison sat in his quarters, 3 levels below the main chamber. He had received no summons for today's meeting. That fact alone told him something was wrong. In his 2 years serving as Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, he had never been excluded from an emergency session. He stared at his communication tablet, refreshing the message feed every few seconds. Nothing came through. Above him, Vexter's voice echoed through the chamber. We gathered today to address a matter of galactic security. The human presence in Council space has become a threat we can no longer ignore. Several ambassadors shifted in their seats. The Moran representative, Councilor Merisith, raised one of her 4 arms. This is a serious accusation, Speaker. What evidence supports such claims? Vexter activated the central display. Images of human ships appeared, followed by charts showing expansion rates and military production numbers. In 30 Earth years, humanity has colonized 47 systems. They have built a fleet of 200 warships. Their military spending exceeds that of any 3 Council species combined. They come from a death world, another ambassador added. Their evolution made them aggressive and competitive. They cannot help their nature. Meriseth spoke again, her voice calm but firm. Many species in this council come from challenging worlds. That alone is not grounds for banishment. It is not just their origin, Vexter countered. Human cultural exports are corrupting younger species. Their entertainment promotes individual glory over collective harmony. Their philosophies question authority and tradition. They are a destabilizing force. The debate continued for an hour. Arguments flew back and forth across the chamber. Finally, Vexter called for a vote. All in favor of Resolution 7742, the immediate banishment of humanity from Council space, indicate now. Lights began appearing on the voting board. Green for approval, red for rejection. The green lights multiplied quickly. When the count finished, 59 species had voted in favor. Only 14 voted against. The resolution passes, Vexter announced. Humanity will be given 30 solar cycles to withdraw all presence from Council space. Ambassador Morrison will be informed tomorrow morning through official channels. Far from Centauri Prime, in the darkness beyond the outer rim, Lieutenant Ryan Carter sat at his monitoring station aboard listening post Artemis. The station was one of 12 that Earth maintained in deep space, officially listed as scientific research outposts. Their real purpose was signals intelligence. Ryan's screen suddenly filled with data. An encrypted transmission burst from Centauri Prime, heading toward multiple Council military installations. The encryption was heavy, military grade. That meant something important had just happened. He ran the signal through the decryption algorithms that Earth's intelligence services had been developing for years. The Council believed their communications were secure. They were wrong. Humanity had been reading Council traffic for the past 18 months. The decryption took 6 minutes. When the text appeared on Ryan's screen, he felt his blood run cold. He read it 3 times to be certain he understood correctly. "Oh no," he whispered. "They actually did it." Ryan's fingers flew across his console. He opened the priority channel directly to Earth Defense Command. The transmission would take 11 minutes to reach home. Every second mattered now. Admiral Lisa Hayes was reviewing fleet deployment reports when the priority alert chimed on her desk. She touched the screen, expecting routine intelligence updates. What she saw made her stand up immediately. "Get me the Joint Chiefs," she said to her aide. "All of them. Right now. And find President Graham." Tell him it's a critical situation. 20 minutes later, Lisa stood in the secure briefing room facing the highest ranking military officers on Earth. The holographic display showed Ryan's decoded message. The council voted to banish us. Lisa said without preamble. 59 species in favor. They're giving us 30 days to leave all council space. General Marcus Webb, head of Earth's strategic forces, leaned forward. When was this vote? 4 hours ago. But here's the critical part. Ambassador Morrison doesn't know yet. They deliberately excluded him from the session. According to the decoded message, they plan to deliver the official declaration tomorrow morning. Why the delay? Another officer asked. Lisa activated another section of the display. Because it gives them time to move their fleets into position. Look at these movement orders. 3 major council battle groups are being redirected toward human space. They're calling it a training exercise, but the timing is too convenient. Webb's expression darkened. They're going to surround our forces before telling us we're banished. Then they'll demand we disarm and withdraw under threat. That's my assessment, Lisa agreed. If we wait for the official declaration, we'll be boxed in. They'll have tactical advantage. What are you proposing? Webb asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. Lisa met his gaze steadily. We have maybe 48 hours before the formal declaration arrives. Maybe 60 if we're lucky. I propose we don't wait to be told twice. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what she meant. Moving first would mean striking without official provocation. It would mean gambling Earth's future on intelligence that might be incomplete. This is a decision for the president, Webb finally said. I know, Lisa replied. But I need fleet authorization ready the moment he gives the word. We'll need to move fast once we start. President Connor Graham arrived at the Pentagon 90 minutes later. He listened to Lisa's briefing without interruption, his face growing more troubled with each detail. You're asking me to authorize a preemptive strike, he said when she finished. I'm asking you to authorize a defensive operation. Before the enemy completes their encirclement, Lisa corrected. Sir, if we wait, they'll disarm us without firing a shot. Then they'll occupy our colonies and dictate terms. Humanity will become a subject species. Connor stood and walked to the window. Outside, the capital city continued its evening routine. People walked streets, lived their lives, completely unaware that their entire civilization stood at a crossroads. If we do this, Connor said slowly, there's no going back. We'll be starting a war with the entire Galactic Council. With respect, sir, they already started it when they voted. We're just refusing to be victims. Connor turned back to face her. How confident are you in this intelligence? Lieutenant Carter has never been wrong. His decryption methods are solid. The message is real. The president closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them again, his expression had hardened with resolve. How long to mobilize? 12 hours for initial elements. 24 for full deployment. Connor nodded slowly. Authorization granted. But Admiral Hayes, I want one thing clear. Minimum casualties. We prove we're better than them by showing restraint, even when we strike first. Can you do that? Yes, sir, Lisa said. We have options that will neutralize their fleet without killing anyone. Then make it happen. And may God help us all. Lisa left the Pentagon and returned to her command center. Her staff was already assembling, alerted by her aide. She stood before them and spoke clearly. Operation First Thunder is approved. Begin fleet mobilization under exercise protocols. Coordinate with Special Weapons Division. We move in 36 hours. Across the Sol system, human warships received coded orders. Crews reported for what they believed were standard drills. Captains opened sealed orders and felt their hearts race as they read the truth. Humanity was going to war, and they would strike before the enemy even knew the fight had begun. Captain Derek Walsh stood on the bridge of the EDS Valiant, watching his crew work through what they still believed was a standard readiness drill. His sealed orders sat in the safe behind his command chair. He had read them 3 times, each time hoping the words would change. They never did. "Captain, we're receiving priority traffic from Fleet Command," his communications officer reported. Derek acknowledged and moved to his ready room. Once inside with the door sealed, he activated the secure channel. Admiral Lisa Hayes appeared on the screen. "Captain Walsh, status report. The Valiant is at 90% combat readiness, Admiral. All systems check green. The crew believes this is a standard exercise." "Good. Keep it that way for now." Lisa paused, choosing her words carefully. "Derek, I need to know. Can you do this? Can you fire first without an official declaration of war?" Derek considered the question. He had spent 20 years in Earth's Defense Force. He had trained for combat, but never expected to see it. Now the Admiral was asking him to start a war, not respond to one. "Admiral, are we certain about the intelligence?" "As certain as we can be. The Council voted to banish us. They're moving fleets into position to force our compliance. If we wait for them to complete their deployment, we lose." Derek nodded slowly. "Then yes, I can do it. What's the target?" "You'll receive full tactical orders in 6 hours. For now, continue standard operations." Hayes out. The screen went dark. Derek sat alone in his ready room, thinking about the crew outside. They were good people. They had families, hopes, dreams. In a day, he would be asking them to commit an act that would define human history for generations. At Earth Defense Command, Major Ashley Bennett briefed her Special Operations team. The room held 35 of the most elite soldiers humanity had produced. They sat quietly as Ashley displayed the mission parameters. "We're going to board Council warships," she said bluntly. "No authorization to kill unless absolutely necessary for self-defense. Our objective is capture and secure, not destroy." One of her team leaders, Sergeant Jake Palmer, raised his hand. "Ma'am, boarding hostile warships without lethal authorization? That's going to be challenging." "That's why you're the best," Ashley replied. "The Council sees us as aggressive barbarians. We're going to prove them wrong by taking their flagships without spilling blood." Questions? What about resistance? Council security forces won't surrender easily. Ashley activated another display. "We'll have technological advantage. The quantum disruption field will shut down their weapon systems before we breach. They'll be armed with disabled equipment facing us with fully functional gear. The shock factor alone should minimize resistance." "And if it doesn't?" another soldier asked. "Then we use non-lethal suppression. Stun weapons, riot control measures, psychological warfare. Make them think we're unstoppable without actually hurting them." The team absorbed this information. They had trained for shipboarding operations, but always with the assumption of full combat authorization. This was different. This required precision and restraint under pressure. "When do we deploy?" Jake asked. 32 hours. "Get your teams ready." 3 levels below the command center, Dr. Nicole Stevens worked in the Special Weapons Development Laboratory. The project she had led for 4 years was finally ready for field deployment. She called it Project Nightfall, though officially it existed only as a classified line item in the defense budget. The quantum disruption technology was elegant in its simplicity. It generated a field that interfered with the exotic matter cores that powered Council warships. The effect was temporary but devastating. Every system on a ship would fail simultaneously. Life support, weapons, propulsion, communications. Everything would go dark for approximately 6 hours. Before natural quantum fluctuation restored normal function, McColl's team had tested it twice on captured Council scout ships obtained through covert operations. Both tests succeeded perfectly. Now they were about to deploy it against active military targets. The responsibility weighed heavily on her. Admiral Hayes entered the laboratory. Dr. Stevens, status update. All 47 disruption generators are ready for deployment, Admiral. We can cover every target on the list simultaneously. And the safety margins? No chance of permanent damage or life support failure. None. The disruption affects only the exotic matter cores. Emergency life support runs on conventional fusion cells that the field doesn't touch. The crews will be uncomfortable in the dark, but they'll be safe. Lisa nodded. Good, because if anyone dies from our weapons, we lose the moral high ground. This whole operation depends on proving we're better than they think we are. Nicole understood. The technology could have been weaponized to create permanent system failure. Earth could have built a fleet killer that left ships as dead hulks floating in space. Instead, they chose temporary disruption. They chose restraint. The generators are loaded on the assault carriers, Nicole reported. Each strike group will deploy them on approach. Excellent work, Doctor. History may not remember your name, but you may have just saved humanity. As Lisa left the laboratory, she reviewed the deployment schedule on her tablet. 48 warships were now moving toward their staging areas. Each carried a quantum disruption generator and a contingent of Marines for boarding operations. The coordination required was immense. The fleet movements were disguised as routine exercises. Earth ran military drills regularly, so Council observers would see nothing unusual. But each ship was moving to a precise location that would allow simultaneous strikes on 7 major Council fleet concentrations. The timing had to be perfect. Strike too early, and some Council ships would escape. Strike too late, and they would complete their encirclement of human space. The window for operation was narrow. Lieutenant Ryan Carter continued monitoring Council communications from listening post Artemis. The traffic had increased significantly. Council military channels were busy with deployment orders, supply coordination, maintenance schedules. Everything suggested a major operation was being prepared. He decoded another burst transmission and felt sick. The message contained preliminary orders for Council forces to prepare for population management operations in human colonies. The phrase was bureaucratic, but the implication was clear. The Council wasn't just planning to disarm humanity. They were planning to occupy human worlds and control the population directly. Ryan forwarded this immediately to Earth Defense Command. Within minutes, his screen lit up with an incoming call. Admiral Hayes appeared. Lieutenant, confirm this translation. Population management operations? Yes, Admiral. The phrase appears in 3 separate messages to different fleet commanders. It's accompanied by requests for additional security personnel and detention facility specifications. Lisa's expression hardened. They're planning to turn our colonies into prison camps. That's my assessment, Admiral. Good work, Lieutenant. Keep monitoring. If you see anything that suggests they've detected our fleet movements, alert me immediately. Understood, Admiral. The call ended. Ryan sat back in his chair, looking at the decoded messages on his screen. He was 24 years old, assigned to what most people considered a boring monitoring post. Now his intelligence work was literally shaping the course of human history. Back at the Pentagon, President Connor Graham met with his civilian advisors. They debated the ethics and legality of preemptive military action. Some argued it violated principles Earth had always claimed to uphold. Others insisted that self-defense justified extraordinary measures. The intelligence is solid, Connor said, cutting through the debate. The Council voted to banish us. They're moving fleets to enforce it. And now we know they're planning occupation of our colonies. At what point does it become acceptable to defend ourselves? After they fire first, one advisor insisted. And how many people die while we wait for that first shot? Connor countered. How many colonies get occupied before we decide it's okay to fight back? No, we strike first, but we strike smart. We neutralize their military capability without killing anyone. We prove we're defending ourselves, not conquering them. The meeting continued for another hour, but the decision was already made. Earth was committed to Operation First Thunder. The only question now was whether it would succeed. Across human space, families went about their normal lives. Children went to school. Adults worked their jobs. They watched entertainment feeds and complained about traffic. They had no idea their entire civilization was hours away from the biggest gamble in human history. On the bridge of the Valiant, Captain Derek Walsh finally received his tactical orders. He opened the file and studied the target. His battle group would strike the Council's third fleet near Centauri Prime. 23 Council warships against his force of 7 human vessels. The numbers looked bad on paper. But Derek had seen the specifications for Project Nightfall. He understood what would happen when his ships emerged from quantum jump and activated the disruption field. He called his senior staff to the briefing room. It was time to tell them the truth. Time to tell them they were going to start a war. Time to see if they would follow him into the greatest risk humanity had ever taken. The countdown had begun. In 30 hours, the galaxy would discover that humans do not wait to be told twice. The quantum jump exit was silent, as it always was. One moment the Valiant traveled through the folded dimensions between stars. The next moment, space tore open and 7 human warships emerged into normal space 15,000 kilometers from the Council's third fleet. Captain Derek Walsh watched his tactical display light up with contact markers. 23 Council ships, exactly as intelligence predicted. They sat in standard defensive formation, prepared for routine patrol operations. They were not prepared for what was about to happen. Activate Project Nightfall, Derek ordered. His weapons officer touched a control. The quantum disruption generator beneath the Valiant's hull came to life. The field it created was invisible, undetectable by normal sensors. It expanded outward at the speed of light, washing over the Council ships like a wave. On the Council flagship Eternal Vigilance, Admiral Vexner was reviewing deployment schedules when every light on his ship went dark. The main display died. The tactical screens went blank. Emergency lighting failed to activate. In the span of 2 seconds, his ship became a floating piece of dead metal. Report, Vexner shouted into the darkness. His crew scrambled in confusion. Officers checked their stations and found nothing working. Communication systems were silent. Weapons showed no power. The engines had stopped. Even the backup systems were offline. Through the main viewports, Vexner could see his other ships. They hung in space, dark and silent. All 23 vessels in his command had died simultaneously. This is impossible, his tactical officer said. Nothing can disable an entire fleet at once. Then they saw the human ships approaching. 7 vessels, their running lights bright, moving in perfect formation toward the disabled Council fleet. Derek watched the Council ships on his display. The quantum disruption had worked perfectly. Every target showed 0 emissions, 0 activity. They were completely helpless. Launch boarding parties, he ordered. Across his battle group, assault shuttles detached from the human ships and began moving toward the Council vessels. Each shuttle carried a team of Marines led by specialists from Major Ashley Bennett's unit. On the flagship assault shuttle, Sergeant Jake Palmer checked his equipment one final time. He carried a stun rifle and riot control grenades. His entire team was equipped for non-lethal operations. They had practiced this mission 100 times in simulation. Now it was real. 2 minutes to breach, the pilot announced. Jake looked at his team. They were scared. He was scared. But they were also the best humanity had trained. Remember the rules, he said. We're not here to kill anyone. We're here to prove we're better than they think we are. Stun only. No lethal force unless someone is about to die. Make them understand we could kill them but choose not to. The shuttle attached to the Council flagship's airlock. The boarding tube extended and sealed. Jake's team moved forward, breaching tools ready. The airlock opened. They entered the dark corridors of the Council ship. Emergency lighting cast everything in a dim red glow. Jake could hear Council crew members moving in the darkness, confused and afraid. This is Earth Defense Force, Jake announced in standard Galactic. His suit speakers amplified his voice through the corridors. Your ship has been disabled, but not damaged. You are in no danger. Remain calm and you will not be harmed. A Council security officer appeared around a corner, raising a weapon. The weapon didn't fire. The quantum disruption had killed it like everything else. The officer looked at his useless gun in confusion. Jake's team moved forward. One Marine fired a stun round. The Council officer collapsed, unconscious but uninjured. They secured him with restraints and continued toward the bridge. Throughout the disabled fleet, similar scenes played out. Human Marines moved through dark corridors, stunning resistance and securing crews. The Council soldiers tried to fight back, but their weapons were dead. The humans had working equipment. The outcome was never in doubt. Within 2 hours, all 23 ships in the Third Fleet were under human control. Not a single person had been killed. A few Council crew members suffered minor injuries from falls in the darkness, but nothing serious. The human Marines had secured the ships without spilling blood. Derek received confirmation from all boarding teams. He opened a channel to Admiral Dexner, who was now secured in his own ready room under guard. Admiral, this is Captain Derek Walsh of Earth Defense Force. Your fleet is under our control. You and your crews are unharmed. That was intentional. We could have destroyed your ships. We chose not to. Dexner's voice came back, angry but also confused. This is an act of war, human. The Council will respond with overwhelming force. The Council already committed an act of war when they voted to banish Earth while moving fleets to surround us. Derek replied, We're simply not waiting to be disarmed. You should receive your communications back in approximately 4 hours when the disruption field fades. When you do, contact your command. Tell them what happened here. Tell them we had the power to kill everyone and chose mercy instead. At Earth Defense Command, Admiral Lisa Hayes watched reports flow in from 7 different strike zones. All across Council space, human forces had emerged from quantum jumps and disabled Council fleets using Project Nightfall. The operation was proceeding exactly as planned. Ma'am, total ship count, her aide reported. We've neutralized 147 Council warships. 63% of their active military force. Total human casualties, 0. Total Council casualties, 0. Lisa allowed herself a small smile. They had pulled it off. The riskiest military operation in human history had succeeded without killing anyone. What about the Council chambers on Centauri Prime? Ambassador Morrison was just summoned to receive the official banishment declaration. He should be entering the chamber now. On Centauri Prime, Kyle Morrison walked through the halls of the Council building. He had finally received his summons. After 2 days of being excluded from all official business, he was being called to the main chamber. He knew what was coming. The doors opened. Kyle had to find the entire Council assembled. Every ambassador sat in their designated seats. Council Speaker Vexter stood at the central podium, holding a datapad. Ambassador Morrison, Vexter began. The Galactic Council has reached a decision regarding Earth's presence in Council space. Kyle interrupted him. I know about the vote. The chamber went silent. Vexter's expression shifted from formal to surprised. That's impossible. The vote was sealed. Humanity has been monitoring Council communications for 18 months, Kyle said calmly. We know you voted to banish us 2 days ago. We know you excluded me from the session deliberately. We know you've been moving military forces to surround our fleet. We know everything. The chamber erupted in shock. Ambassadors turned to each other, speaking rapidly. Vexter tried to restore order. This is an outrageous accusation, he said. You admit to espionage against the Council? We admit to reading messages you sent on channels you thought were secure, Kyle corrected. If those messages contained evidence of hostile intent toward Earth, that's your problem, not ours. Before Vexter could respond, an aide rushed into the chamber and handed him a datapad. Vexter read it. His scaled face went pale. What is the meaning of this? He demanded. That would be the reports from your fleet commanders, Kyle said. Let me guess. Multiple fleets reporting simultaneous system failures and human boarding parties. 0 casualties on both sides. Ships captured intact. The chamber descended into chaos. Ambassadors shouted questions. Some demanded answers. Others called for immediate military response. Vexter struggled to maintain control. Kyle walked to the center of the chamber. He spoke clearly, his voice cutting through the noise. The Galactic Council voted to banish humanity. You planned to surround our fleets and force our disarmament. You thought we would surrender peacefully. You were wrong. Humans do not surrender when threatened. We fight, but we fight smart. We could have destroyed your fleets. We could have killed thousands. We chose not to. We disabled your ships without harming your crews. We proved we have the power to defeat you and the wisdom to show mercy. Now you have a choice to make. Vexter found his voice again. You have committed an act of war. The Council will not negotiate with aggressors. Then you'll lose the rest of your fleet, Kyle said simply. We've neutralized 63% of your military in a single operation without casualties. What do you think we'll do to the remaining 37% if you force us to continue? The question isn't whether you can defeat us. The question is whether you can survive fighting us. Councilor Miraseth stood, her forearms spread in a gesture of peace. Ambassador Morrison, what does Earth want? Kyle looked at her, then addressed the entire chamber. We want the banishment vote reversed. We want full investigation into who pushed this agenda and why. We want transparency in Council operations. And we want it now, while your fleets are still intact and your crews are still alive. Because if you refuse, we'll make you understand that humanity is not a species that waits to be told twice. The chamber fell silent. Every ambassador understood they had just witnessed a fundamental shift in galactic power. The humans had struck first and struck perfectly. Now they held all the leverage. The choice was simple: negotiate or face complete military defeat. The council chamber remained in chaos for 20 minutes after Kyle's declaration. Ambassadors argued with each other. Some demanded immediate retaliation. Others called for negotiation. A few simply sat in stunned silence, trying to process what had happened. Finally, Council Speaker Vexter restored order by activating the speaker's tone. The loud chime forced everyone to quiet down. This council will not be dictated to by military aggression, Vexter declared. The fact that humans struck before receiving official notification proves they are the threat we feared. We should mobilize our remaining forces immediately. Councilor Miraseth stood again. To what end, Speaker? We mobilize our remaining ships, and humans disable them too. We lose our entire fleet and gain nothing. The humans demonstrated they can strike anywhere simultaneously. They proved their technology superior to ours. And most importantly, they showed restraint when they could have shown destruction. They invaded our ships, another ambassador protested. They violated council sovereignty. After we voted to banish them and move forces to surround their space, Mirasith countered. We struck first politically and militarily. They simply struck back faster and harder than we expected. Kyle watched the debate unfold. He remained standing in the center of the chamber, waiting. He had delivered his message. Now he would see how the council responded. The Vrillan ambassador, a species known for their warrior culture, spoke up. The humans fought with honor. They could have killed but chose not to. In Vrellan tradition, such restraint in victory earns respect. Perhaps we judged them too quickly. They read our communications, Vexter said. They spied on us for months. And what secrets did they find? Mirasith asked. They found evidence that we planned to surround and disarm them. They found messages about occupation and population management. If our communications revealed hostile intent, the blame lies with us, not with them for discovering it. More ambassadors began speaking in support of negotiation. The tide in the chamber was shifting. The shock of the human strike was giving way to rational analysis. Earth had demonstrated overwhelming military advantage. Continuing conflict would only result in complete council defeat. Vexter saw his support crumbling. He played his final card. We cannot simply reverse a council vote because the subject of that vote responded with violence. It sets a terrible precedent. No, Kyle interjected. The terrible precedent is voting to banish a species based on fear and lies. Ambassador Vexter, would you like to explain to this council why the banishment vote was called an emergency session? What was the emergency? Earth wasn't threatening anyone. We were simply growing, trading, and existing. The emergency was that you couldn't control us. The emergency was that our ideas were popular with younger species. The emergency was political, not military. Vexter's scaled face flushed darker. You know nothing of council politics. I know you lied to most of these ambassadors, Kyle said. He activated his own datapad, linking it to the chamber's central display. I have the communications Lieutenant Ryan Carter decoded. The messages sent between Vexter and Council Military Command. The planning for what you called the banishment enforcement operation. Let's show everyone what that plan actually included. Documents appeared on the display. Messages about troop deployments. Requests for detention facilities. Plans for occupation government. The ambassadors reading growing horror. Many had voted for banishment, believing it meant simply expelling humans from council space. They had not known about the military occupation plans. You told us the banishment was for galactic security, one ambassador said, turning to Vexter. You said humans would be escorted peacefully from council space. You never mentioned occupation. I mentioned population management, Vexter defended weakly. A bureaucratic phrase that hides the truth, Mirasith said. You plan to turn human colonies into prison camps. You plan military occupation. You lied to this council to get votes for your agenda. The mood in the chamber turned against Vexter. Ambassadors who had voted for banishment now felt betrayed. They had supported what they thought was a defensive measure. Instead, they had voted for aggressive military action. At Earth Defense Command, Admiral Lisa Hayes monitored the situation through live feeds from Kyle's communication device. She watched the council turn against Vexter, but she also watched the tactical displays showing council military activity. Admiral, we're detecting movement from council reserve forces, her tactical officer reported. Looks like 3 battle groups. They're forming up in the Kelton sector. Lisa frowned. The Kelton sector was on the edge of council space, far from the main action. What's their heading? Calculating now. It looks like they're moving toward Earth. Lisa felt her stomach tighten. The Council's reserve forces had not been in position during the initial strikes. Now they were mobilizing, and they were heading directly toward humanity's home system. How long until they reach Sol System? At current speed, approximately 40 hours. Lisa opened a priority channel to Kyle. His datapad would vibrate silently to alert him. She couldn't speak to him directly while he was in the council chamber, but she could send a message. She typed quickly, "Reserve forces moving toward Earth. 3 battle groups. Recommend expedite negotiations." On Centauri Prime, Kyle felt the vibration. He glanced at his pad and read Lisa's message. His expression remained neutral, but his mind raced. The council leadership might be debating, but some military elements were still acting on the original plan. He addressed the chamber again. "While we debate, council military forces are moving toward Earth. 3 battle groups from your reserve fleet. Do any of you ambassadors know about this? Or is this another decision being made without council approval?" The chamber erupted again. Ambassadors demanded answers. Vexter tried to restore order, but failed. The Vrillan ambassador stood and pointed at Vexter. "You planned a 2-part strategy," the Vrillan said. "The main fleets were bait. You expected them to be the focus. Meanwhile, reserve forces would strike at Earth itself. You were willing to risk all-out war without council approval." Vexter said nothing. His silence was confirmation enough. Mirasith walked to the center of the chamber, standing beside Kyle. "This has gone far enough. Council Speaker Vexter, I move for your immediate removal from the speaker position for unauthorized military action and deception of this council." Seconded. 3 other ambassadors said. Simultaneously, the vote happened quickly. 41 ambassadors voted to remove Vexter. Only 12 voted to keep him. He was escorted from the speaker's podium, his face showing shock and anger. Mirasith assumed the temporary speaker position. She looked at Kyle. "Ambassador Morrison, Earth has demonstrated both military capability and moral restraint. What must happen to prevent further conflict?" Kyle spoke carefully. "First, recall those battle groups heading toward Earth. Second, open formal investigation into this entire situation. Third, nullify the banishment vote. Fourth, negotiate new protocols for Council-Earth relations based on transparency and mutual respect. And if we do this, will Earth return our ships and crews? Immediately. We're not interested in conquest. We're interested in being left alone to exist without fear of military action against us." Mirasith looked around the chamber. All ambassadors in favor of Ambassador Morrison's terms? The vote was overwhelming. 57 in favor. Only 5 against. "The council accepts," Mirasith announced. "The banishment is nullified. Investigations will begin immediately, and I am ordering all council military forces to stand down and return to defensive positions." She opened a communication channel to Council Military Command. "This is Acting Council Speaker Mirasith. Battle Groups 7, 9, and 12 are ordered to abort their current mission and return to base immediately. Any commander who continues toward human space will be arrested for violation of Council authority. Confirm receipt." There was a pause. Then a voice responded. "Battle Group 7 confirms. Standing down." Battle Group 9 confirms. Returning to base. The third response took longer. Finally, it came. Battle Group 12 confirms. Mission aborted. Kyle felt relief wash over him. The immediate crisis was over. The shooting would stop before it really began. In the Sol System, Captain Brandon Cole stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Justice. He commanded Battle Group 12. His orders had been clear. Proceed to Earth and strike their orbital facilities in retaliation for human aggression. But now those orders were countermanded by the Council itself. His crew looked at him, waiting for direction. "Sir, we could still complete the mission," his tactical officer said quietly. "We're 36 hours from Earth. They might not detect us until we're already in strike range." Brandon looked at the tactical display. The human home system was ahead. His ships carried enough firepower to devastate Earth's orbital infrastructure. The humans had humiliated the Council. He could restore some pride with one successful strike. Then he thought about the reports from the captured fleets. The humans had disabled them without casualties. They could have killed thousands, but chose not to. They had proven themselves capable of both overwhelming force and remarkable restraint. What would striking Earth accomplish? It would kill civilians. It would turn this conflict into a real war. It would prove the humans. Captain Brandon Cole sat in his ready room, staring at his duty log. He was supposed to write an official report explaining why he had aborted his mission against Earth. The truth was simple, but hard to put into formal language. He had disobeyed what he believed were immoral orders. In most militaries, that resulted in court-martial. In the Council Defense Force, it would likely end his career. A communication alert chimed. Brandon accepted it, expecting to see his superior officer preparing to relieve him of command. Instead, Ambassador Kyle Morrison appeared on the screen. "Captain Cole, I'm Ambassador Morrison from Earth. I wanted to thank you personally for standing down your battle group." Brandon straightened in his chair. "Ambassador, I was just following Council orders." "No, you were following your conscience," Kyle corrected. "Your original orders came from military command. The countermand came later. You could have ignored it and claimed you never received it in time. You could have completed your strike and argued you were following your initial instructions. You chose not to. The humans showed mercy to our captured fleets," Brandon said. "It seemed wrong to respond with violence against your civilian population." "That kind of thinking is why I'm calling," Kyle said. "Captain, the Council is investigating everyone involved in the banishment conspiracy. Many people will be punished. But a few people made the right choices when it mattered. Admiral Dexner and his staff are being court-martialed for participating in unauthorized military operations. But you and several other commanders who stood down are being recognized for following proper Council authority." Brandon felt relief wash over him. "I appreciate you letting me know, Ambassador. There's more. Earth is establishing a formal embassy on Centauri Prime. We're going to need people who understand both Council military procedures and human capabilities. People who showed good judgment under pressure. I'd like to offer you a position as military liaison between Earth and the Council." Brandon stared at the screen in shock. "You want me to work for Earth? After I nearly attacked your home?" "You nearly attacked, then chose not to. That's the kind of person I want working for us. Someone who can recognize a bad order and refuse to follow it. Someone who values life over pride. Will you consider it?" "I need to think about it," Brandon said honestly. "But yes, I'll consider it." "Good. Take your time. The offer stands whenever you're ready." The screen went dark. Brandon sat back, processing the conversation. An hour ago, he thought his career was over. Now he was being offered a new one, working with the very species he'd been ordered to attack. The galaxy was changing fast. At Earth Defense Command, Admiral Lisa Hayes addressed her senior staff. The quantum disruption generators had been deactivated hours ago. All captured Council ships were now fully functional again. Marine boarding parties were preparing to transfer control back to Council crews. "The operation exceeded all projections," Lisa said. "0 casualties on both sides. 147 enemy vessels neutralized and captured. Forced diplomatic negotiations on our terms. Mission accomplished." Her staff applauded. They had pulled off the most successful military operation in human history. But Lisa's expression remained serious. Now comes the hard part. We proved we can win a war. Now we have to win the peace. Captain Walsh will oversee the return of captured vessels. Major Bennett will coordinate withdrawal of our Marine units. Dr. Stevens will brief Council scientists on the quantum disruption technology so they understand it was temporary and harmless. We're sharing the technology? One officer asked in surprise. We're sharing enough information to prove we weren't trying to permanently damage their ships, Lisa clarified. We show good faith. We prove we're trustworthy. That's how we turn enemies into neutral parties and eventually into partners. The briefing continued for another hour. Earth had won the military confrontation. Now, they had to manage the aftermath carefully to prevent future conflicts. On Centauri Prime, the formal investigation into the banishment conspiracy moved quickly. Council investigators reviewed communication logs, interviewed ambassadors, and reconstructed the entire plot. What they found shocked even those who suspected wrongdoing. Former Council Speaker Vexter had coordinated with hardline military commanders to manufacture the crisis. They had exaggerated the human threat, manipulated intelligence reports, and presented the banishment vote as the only option for galactic security. Their real goal was to prevent human cultural and economic influence from growing. They feared being left behind as younger species embraced human ideas about individual freedom and democratic governance. 14 ambassadors were implicated in the conspiracy. All were removed from their positions. 3 military commanders, including Admiral Dexner, faced formal charges. The investigation revealed that most council members had voted for banishment based on false information. They had been manipulated. Acting Council Speaker Miraseth called a full session to present the findings. The chamber was crowded with ambassadors, many of whom looked embarrassed or angry about being deceived. This council failed in its most basic responsibility, Miraseth said. We allowed fear to override reason. We permitted a small group to manipulate us into aggressive action against a peaceful member species. We owe humanity an apology. She turned to Kyle Morrison, who sat in the human delegation section. Ambassador Morrison, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally apologize for the unjust banishment vote and the military action that followed. We recognize that Earth acted in legitimate self-defense. We acknowledge that your restraint and victory demonstrated the very qualities we falsely claimed you lacked. Kyle stood and walked to the central floor. The Council's apology is accepted, but words alone aren't enough. Earth requires concrete changes to prevent this from happening again. What changes do you propose? Miraseth asked. Kyle activated his datapad, displaying a document on the chamber's screens. First, no council military action without majority vote and 48-hour notification period. Second, all council communications to be accessible to member species through proper channels. No more secret military frequencies. Third, formal dispute resolution process before any banishment vote can be considered. Fourth, human representation on the Council Security Committee. The proposals were radical by Council standards. They would fundamentally change how the organization operated. But after what had happened, few ambassadors were willing to object. The vote passed with 68 in favor. Only 5 opposed. The Council had accepted Earth's terms completely. 3 weeks later, President Connor Graham addressed both Earth and the galaxy via simultaneous broadcast. He stood in the White House press room, looking directly at the cameras. 3 weeks ago, humanity faced the greatest threat in our history. The Galactic Council voted to banish us from Council space and prepared military forces to enforce that banishment. We learned of this plot before official notification. We had a choice. Wait and hope for mercy or act and demand respect. We chose action. Connor paused, letting that sink in. Our military forces struck preemptively. We disabled 147 Council warships in a single coordinated operation. We did this without killing a single enemy soldier or civilian. We proved that humans could be devastating in war and merciful in victory. We proved that we deserved a place in the galactic community, not because others granted it to us, but because we earned it through both strength and wisdom. He continued, his tone becoming more optimistic. Today, I'm pleased to announce that Earth has been formally recognized as a full Council member with equal voting rights. We have secured binding agreements on transparency and due process. We have established new diplomatic relationships with dozens of species. And we have proven that humanity will not wait to be told twice when our survival is at stake. The broadcast ended. Across Earth, people celebrated. They had been hours from potential war. Instead, they had gained security and respect in the council chambers on Centauri Prime. The first session under the new charter began. Councillor Mira Sith, now formally elected as council speaker, called the meeting to order. This session marks a new era, she said. We have learned that fear and deception lead only to failure. We have learned that strength without wisdom is dangerous, but strength with wisdom is admirable. The human species taught us these lessons at great risk to themselves. They could have destroyed our fleets. They could have invaded our worlds. They chose a better path. Kyle Morrison took his place at the council table, now seated among the other major members rather than in a secondary position. He looked around the chamber, seeing the faces of ambassadors who 3 weeks ago had voted to banish his species. Now they were colleagues. Captain Brandon Cole stood against the wall, wearing the insignia of Earth's Military Liaison Office. He had accepted the job. His knowledge of Council military operations was already proving valuable. Lieutenant Ryan Carter received the Council's highest intelligence service medal for his work decoding the critical communications. At 24 years old, he had become one of the most important people in human diplomatic history. Major Ashley Bennett and her Marines returned to Earth as heroes. They had pulled off impossible boarding operations without casualties. Training programs around the world now studied their tactics.